Hello, dear brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining our Mother and Refuge of the End Times. We would like to share with you part 6 of Dr. Daniel O'Connor's blog post dated March 14th, 2022, entitled Warning 2022, on his website dsdoconnor.com. Let us discuss the next reason as to why Dr. O'Connor believes the warning could be imminent. Point number 13. Economic collapse. Hyperinflation. The historically unprecedented financial recklessness of the nations of the world in response to COVID these last 2 years has decimated any semblance of robustness in their economies. Even if all went perfectly smoothly from the end of COVID onward, recovery would have been a miracle. Instead, only the opposite is happening. War, which will wind up costing even more than the money dumped on the COVID response, is now upon us. There is no mathematically possible way for the present economic system to survive what is playing out before our eyes, and we are already seeing the beginnings of its collapse through the emergence of hyperinflation. 2 years ago, I could have purchased a gallon of gasoline for $1.90. Today, there are gas stations near me where I'd have to pay $190 just to fill up my tank once. 2 years ago, I could buy many pantry staples for a fraction of what they now cost. I could heat my home for a fraction of the price. It is completely disingenuous, however, to look at this as ordinary inflation. Ordinary inflation is slow enough that wage growth can reasonably keep up the pace. Today's inflation far outpaces wage growth. The very mention of the word hyperinflation caused those of us who warned of its arrival years ago to be laughed at, but it's now acknowledged by the most mainstream of financial news sources. A Forbes headline reads, "How to Prepare for Hyperinflation." Another from CNBC reads, "There is nowhere to hide for consumers as inflation hits food, gas, housing." And sometimes satire says it best. On the Babylon Bee, "Let them drive Teslas," says Pete Buttigieg, clad in elaborate 18th century royal gown. When ordinary people can no longer afford food, fuel, and rent, chaos always ensues. I encourage you to read about the events that have preceded the total collapse of various nations of the last several decades. It almost always centers around the anarchy that comes when people are not making enough money to put food on the table or fill up their gas tanks. Moreover, the present conflict, considering the disruption in essential trade it is already causing, is bound to contribute disproportionately to the calamity. Essential trade flows of food and fuel are being disrupted, if not eliminated, and this dynamic promises only to get worse. A headline from NBC News reads, "Global wheat supplies in peril as war brings risk of food shortages worldwide." Another from Wired, "The war in Ukraine is threatening the world's wheat supply." And from Global Citizen, "What can we do? How Russia's invasion of Ukraine could force 500 million people into acute hunger." Remember another headline from the book of Revelation, the third seal, quote, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius." Revelation 6, verse 6. In other words, you have to spend a denarius, an entire day's wages, just to get enough food to barely sustain a small family for that day. We've been approaching that for years now, and the present crisis will hasten its arrival. Point number 14. The elite's practice run of techno, persecuting an entire nation's population, Russia. Let me make clear that I condemn what Putin is doing by invading Ukraine, though I also do not buy the mainstream narrative that makes him out to be the devil incarnate. I pray Putin has a change of heart and withdraws his forces from Ukraine immediately. My heart breaks for the innocent people being slaughtered each day in Ukraine, and I beg everyone to fast and pray for an end to this. And I of course understand that there must be some kind of response from the nations. All that said, this unanimous Western NATO EU corporate reaction of deciding that all of Russia's 144 million innocent citizens need to be mercilessly and cruelly punished on account of Putin's bloody ambition is absurd. How are we helping anything or anyone by contributing to the economic devastation and accordingly, perhaps even the mass starvation of an entire country's population? The answer, of course, is nothing. The elite knows that, but as always, there is more going on behind the scenes. They are testing out this infrastructure of the Antichrist they've labored over for the last 2 years. They are showing us how, with a few clicks of a few buttons, an entire nation of 144 million can be brought to its knees, its currency destroyed, its vital digital infrastructure in tatters, its digital payment systems inoperative, its online communications blocked, and on the list goes. Incidentally, rest assured that Russia will indeed lash out in response to this and will become the very global chastisement that the aforementioned prophecies indicate she will become. Remember that it was precisely the excessive economic punishment of Germany after World War I that especially caused the fomenting of World War II. It humiliated the German people and primed them to accept the rise of Hitler. The Guardian states, "Defiant Putin warns the West, your sanctions are akin to an act of war." And on CNN, Russia's economy will be devastated by sanctions, and further sanctions are under consideration, Janet Yellen says. The even more disconcerting reality here is what is happening without any legal government-initiated action: corporate-imposed sanctions. Businesses that have become essential for day-to-day necessities, such as credit card companies, suddenly leaving all of their customers high and dry. The cost of this will be measured in human lives. The purge is entering its next phase. According to the New York Times, Russia, blocked from the global internet, plunges into digital isolation. Another headline from Simple Flying: Russians stranded abroad as flights and credit cards get cancelled. This is what they will do to you next. Do you really think you are safe from this corporate, economic, and digital persecution merely because your own president's name isn't Vladimir? This is just a preview of what will be done to those who do not cooperate with the Antichrist and who refuse his mark. Point number 15. The incessant priming of the masses to expect a, quote, global cyber attack. Remember that the Antichrist's minions will never succeed in getting the implanted financial chip, the mark of the beast, universally instituted and accepted unless they can convince the masses that it is absolutely necessary to resolve some global cybersecurity issue. They will therefore need to create that very global cybersecurity issue. As I discussed last July, right now, it appears that the World Economic Forum has signaled what the next global disaster will be: a cyber attack. Klaus Schwab, the preeminent anti-prophet of the Great Reset, his own creation, is also the founder and leader of the World Economic Forum, and he recently stated that a major cyber attack would, quote, make coronavirus look minor in comparison. In January of this year, the World Economic Forum produced a video sounding the alarm about a, quote, cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics that would spread farther and faster than any biological virus. As the digital realm increasingly merges with our physical world, the ripple effects of cyber attacks on our safety just keep on expanding. The time is now. Whether these attacks are being expressly organized as part of some grand conspiracy, I do not know, but I do suspect that they are at least being deliberately permitted by the elite puppet masters in order to get us more and more used to cyber attacks, more and more afraid of them, and more ready to desperately ask for a solution to them. This desperation will be precisely what the Antichrist will need in order to compel the people to willingly sign to receive a chip under the skin, for this alone will be deemed by his minions among the global elite as sufficiently secure. I am extremely skeptical of the incessant barrage of claims that Russia has the capability to decimate the internet as we know it through cyber attacks. In fact, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are each bigger than the entire Russian economy, measured by market cap versus Russia's GDP. And each is 100% about the internet, whereas such e-issues can only garner a small fraction of the Russian government's focus. So no, if the internet is going to collapse and not due to something like a solar EMP, then it will be with the cooperation of our big tech overlords. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, however, has caused our elites to go into overdrive in warning us about an imminent Russian cyber attack. They thus warn, of course, because they know it will happen. But they have no idea what Russia will do. Therefore, they know it will happen because they themselves will cause it. Out of nowhere, my own state's godless Catholic governor, Kathy Hochul of New York, started demanding we get ready for Russian cyber attacks days before Russia even invaded Ukraine. But it's not only her. These warnings are coming from every level. A headline in Gothamist reads, Governor Hochul warns New Yorkers to beware of cyber attacks in growing Russia-Ukraine crisis. Another headline from USA Today, Biden says we are prepared to respond if Russia launches cyber attack against the US. Reuters, US banks prepare for cyber attacks after latest Russia sanctions. In sum, it seems likely that some major cyber attack is coming soon. It will be devastating to the global digital financial order, and its repercussions will be used to justify the introduction of the mark of the beast, a chip inserted under the skin on the right hand or forehead, which pairs or syncs with each person's smartphone and which alone enables them to use the new imminent federal digital dollar. Brothers and sisters, please join us again soon for part 7 of Dr. Daniel O'Connor's blog post, in which we'll discuss point 16, the near impossibility that we aren't now in it. Please let us know what you think in the comments below. May God bless you and keep you. Until next time.